Welcome everyone. Frank DeMore here reporting for the End Times Research Ministry. Today is September the 17th, 2013. One of the first things that I want to share with you today is what's happening in the Middle East. And every day, at least I'm trying to every day, bring you up to date on the important news that points to Bible prophecy soon being fulfilled. There was an article that I read today, is Hezbollah's Syria approach tied to the Shiite end times doctrine? A very interesting article. And in this article you're going to find out that they're talking about the people that the Lord mentions in Psalm 83. And as you know, the arrows, the yellow arrows, the pointed down, it's the Hezbollah. We see the Hezbollah in different areas. And number 9, you see it as Tyre, the Hezbollah in Lebanon. And also you see Jabal, which are today's the Hezbollah in northern Lebanon, the Lebanese. So knowing this, what I'm going to be showing you is the map of the people that are going to be attacking Israel soon in the Psalm 83 war, of which Israel will win this war. But it becomes very, very important to understand when you see the news and these same people are in the news, then the back of your hair should start raising up, especially when you start to see this news almost on a daily basis. So here is that article. It says, knowing that Hezbollah Secretary General Hassan Nasrallah thinks regarding the predicted military strike by Washington against the regime of his ally, Syrian President Bashar al-Assad, is a matter of concern and confusion for numerous observers in Lebanon. So here you go, also in Lebanon, as I just showed you, Nasrallah, with Hezbollah in Lebanon, the very people that the Lord warned about in Psalm 83. There are a number of important questions that arise when considering how Nasrallah thinks. Moreover, there is an urgent need to get the idea of what Nasrallah's answers might be. These questions include, how will Nasrallah react to the U.S. strike on Syria? Keep in mind, Syria is another one of the countries in the Psalm 83 war against Israel. What strategy will he retain? And according to what political, ideological, and strategical approach? Will he bow down, hoping to withdraw his power and save it for an upcoming round, which may be target him directly? Or will he join the front to run one battle with his ally? And I can tell you right now, that's exactly what they're going to end up doing, because that's what the Bible says is going to happen in Psalm 83. They are aligned together as a confederate nation, all of these countries. That's what it says in the Psalm 83 verse 5 when it's talking about the confederate nations. Nasrallah deliberately left these questions unanswered. This falls within the scope of the psychological war against Israel. And of course, we know what's coming because Psalm 83 tells us these people are coming against Israel, and that's what they're showing us in these articles. And the West, according to the policy deliberate ambiguity, this time, Nasrallah did not address this popular base to declare his position regarding Washington's intention to strike Syria. He made sure not to link, though the party's channels and officials, any sign as to how Hezbollah will react on the military level if President Barack Obama were to carry out a strike on the Syrian regime. And according to Hezbollah sources, Nasrallah decided to leave it to the enemy to interpret his intentions, hoping that this would affect the assessment by the West and Israel, because that's the major player in the Middle East for the last days, of the outcomes of his reaction to the U.S. strike on Syria. But beyond this policy of deliberate ambiguity, there is an ideological aspect in his approach that interacts with the political, strategical structure of his interpretation of the current situation in Syria. Now, Nasrallah is known for being a strong believer as well as for his confidence that the great war in the region between Iran Syria, and Hezbollah is bound to occur, and that the camp he will be allied with will be victorious, even if human and material costs are quite high. Nasrallah, as well as the Iranians surrounding the leader of the Islamic Republic, Ayatollah Khamenei, rely on facts contained in a religious book to demonstrate the inevitable great war with Israel. Do I need to say anything else? I mean, they're the leaders of the same people, the exact same people that the Lord has shown to us. As you see here, they're talking about a war with Israel. Now, I'm praying with all of my heart that the Holy Spirit is showing you that that war is coming. And the signs that we're seeing in the news are signs that the Lord is bestowing on you to pay attention to what's going to take place in the near future. Now, as you could see from this next article, the Palestinian leadership backs Assad. And again, I'm going to use my little arrows to show you. The Philistina, they're in number 8. This is the Palestinians, the present-day Palestinians, who are the modern-day Hamas of the Gaza Strip, of which there's a lot of a contention that's going on right now between Israel and the Palestinians in the Gaza Strip. So it's really advantageous to understand who the players are in this photo, because these are the people who soon will be attacking Israel in the last days. So here is that report that came out today, September the 17th. And it says this: it is by now no secret that well over 100,000 people have died in the Syrian civil war. Keep in mind, this is exactly what the Lord prophesied in Matthew chapter 24, when he said there would be war and rumors of wars, nation against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. Civil war. And yet, that has not been enough reason to stop the long-suffering Palestinian leadership from backing the Syrian dictator Bashar al-Assad. In fact, both the Hamas and Fatah, the faction of the Palestinian leadership, Ahmad Abbas, have openly sided with the butcher of Damascus. Now moving on, according to this Kuwaiti newspaper, the Hamas leaders, and there's a few of them, you see Hamad Amil and Hamad al-Azhar, are fully on Assad's side. In other words, they're on Bashar al-Assad, the leader of Syria's side. Now, Khalil Mashal, the international face of Hamas, which again I pointed out in that photo of Psalm 83, that this is one of the groups of people who are going to be coming against Israel, has been somewhat more diplomatic, calling for a political solution in Syria. But I don't really care how much diplomatic solutions they're going to be called for. The bottom line is there's going to be an attack, and these are the people who are going to be there. So although Hamas is a Sunni Muslim movement, it is financially and ideologically supported by the Shia Muslims in Iran. So Iran is going to be playing a major role. Not so much that they're going to have their military there in the Psalm 83, but they are a proxy nation to Syria and Lebanon and these other nations that are listed in the Psalm 83 war. The Assad regime is an ally of Iran, and everybody should know that by now. And if you don't, well, you do now. And therefore also aligned itself with Hamas, allowing the group to make its headquarters in Damascus for decades leading up to the current civil war. So bottom line is, you have the Palestinian leadership, and you saw who they are, aligning them with themselves with, no doubt, exactly what we see here in Scripture. The Hamas, the Hezbollah, you see the Hamas, Phoenicia, the Palestinians, and the Syrians, all of which that you're seeing almost on a daily basis in the news now. So now I want to turn my attention to Zechariah 12:3. In Zechariah 12:3, we see the burdensome stone for anybody that's going to be dealing on Israel, Jerusalem. All right? You see, this is the Dome of the Rock. And so it becomes important to pull all these things together. And in the past, I've been showing you how Barack Obama has actually been stabbing the Israelis, which they're supposed to be friends with, in the back. And from periodically, we see other news articles that keep showing up, showing us the antagonism between the Prime Minister of Israel and President Barack Hussein Obama. And now I want to bring you to one of those articles. You'll see it says the analyst, Obama's learning curve meets Bibi's red line. Now, Bibi is just a short for Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. It says Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has postponed the date of his upcoming speech in the United Nations General Assembly from September 30th to October 1st. And keep in mind, these dates fall into the Jewish holidays in the fall. And in the past, there's been many prophecies that have been filled on the feast days. As a matter of fact, Jesus fulfilled 4 of the first spring festivals, or the feast, on his first coming. And we believe that he's going to be carrying out the rest of those Jewish festivals, the fall ones, which there's 3 left when he returns the second time. So moving on. So that he can meet with the U.S. President Barack Obama in the White House. Now, this newspaper reports that the rescheduling took place because September 30 is the only day on which Obama could meet Netanyahu, due to the fact that the rest of his schedule is devoted to meetings regarding health care. Now, the report is almost purely technical. Who hasn't rescheduled meetings in order to fit them into a tight schedule? But there may be diplomatic significance between the lines. And this is what I've been showing people from time to time, that the relationship between the United States and Israel is crumbling, and the reason why it's crumbling, obviously, is getting ready to fulfill Zechariah 12:3, where all the nations of the world are going to be coming against Israel, and that includes the United States of America, of which President Barack Hussein Obama right now is the man who has done more damage to the relationship of the United States and Israel than all the presidents. That says, meeting between Israeli prime ministers and the U.S. presidents are an almost routine matter in the autumn season, when the United Nations General Assembly conveys the world leaders make pilgrimage to New York. And yet, Netanyahu and Obama did not meet last year, although Netanyahu quite publicly desired the meeting. Now, both men were in New York City for the General Assembly. At the time, there was a great tension between the two over the matter of the Iranian nuclear threat. With Ehud Barak as defense minister, Israel was making unmistakable hold-me-back noises, threatening to launch a unilateral preemptive strike against Iran, partly due to a feeling that his growing sense of an existential threat was being met with the very cold U.S. shoulder. Now, Netanyahu made his famous red line speech at the UN, highlighting the immediate danger posed by Iran's nuclear weapons program, but Obama, who was in the middle of his re-election campaign, did not find time in his schedule to meet Netanyahu. I mean, we're talking about Middle East problems that could cause World War III. And the president wouldn't meet with supposedly one of his staunch supporters or allies. Notably, Obama did find time in his New York stay to appear on ABC's The View, together with his wife, Michelle, where he joked with his female presenters. I'm just supposed to be eye candy here for you guys. The disconnect between Israel's dire situation and Obama's lightheaded state of mind could not have been starker. In previous years, too, occasions on which Netanyahu and Obama met were characterized by visible tension and very bad blood. I've been talking about this for a long time, and I'm glad somebody else is writing about it. In March of 2010, he was treated rudely by Obama in the White House, reportedly after being let in through the back entrance, of which I mentioned before at my site. For a head of the government to visit the White House and not pose for photographers is rare, wrote Fox News at the time. For a key ally, get this, for a key ally to be left on his own devices while the president withdraws to have dinner in the private was, until this week, unheard of. Yet that is how Benjamin Netanyahu was treated by President Obama on Tuesday night, according to the Israeli reports, on the trip viewed in Jerusalem as a humiliation. One Israeli newspaper called the meeting a hazing in stages, poisoned by mistrust. Now, the British Telegraph reported that Netanyahu was left to stew in the White House meeting room for over an hour after President Barack Obama abruptly walked out of tense talks to have supper with his family. Now, can you believe that an American president would actually do this? Well, he did it. It was proved that he did it. But it shows us and it proves to us that he really has a disdain for the nation of Israel. He has a disdain for the Prime Minister of Israel. And he did never, you won't find any article where he did any such thing to any Arab leader or Islamic leader that he had visited. It just shows us the United States of America, who used to be once a strong ally of Israel, is disintegrating to fulfill Zechariah 12:3. Now, because Iran has so much influence in what's going on with the Psalm 83 nations, I need to bring Iran in at this point and to at least point out that, for those people who don't know, that the Psalm 83 war will be first, then the Ezekiel war will take place after that. And that war will be led by the Russians, the invasion against Israel. And Iran will be one of their major allies who is going to attack with Russia coming down against Israel. And what we're seeing in the news about the nuclear problem in Iran and the threats of war that have been put on the back burner because of what's taken place in Syria, but now they're starting to come to a head again because Israel is faced with problems on both fronts. They're faced with the problem of Syria to the north, and then they're faced with the other nation, the major nation in the Ezekiel 38 war, which is Iran. So I need to bring to you the newest news showing us what's going on. Rogue countries that develop WMD, now these are weapons of mass destruction, will in fact use them. For the second time in as many days, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has said publicly that rogue regimes that develop weapons of mass destruction will end up using them. Netanyahu will meet Obama in Washington on September the 30th for talks on Iran. So if you can remember this, keep this in mind about this date, because I'm pretty sure that this date will end up changing, and it could be before or after. They're talking about October 1st possibly, but let's see how the president reacts to his supposedly ally when he comes. The comments come in Netanyahu's office and said that the Israeli leader will meet U.S. President Barack Obama in Washington on September 30th, an Israeli official said on Tuesday, for talks expected to focus on Iran's nuclear program. Netanyahu confirming he would see Obama, but giving no exact date, said the talks would take place before he attended the annual United Nations General Assembly in New York. I intend to focus on the question of stopping Iran's nuclear program and actual, get this now, this is important, an actual halt to the nuclear program. In other words, Benjamin Netanyahu has watched Barack Obama do nothing, and the rest of the world do nothing to stop the nuclear weapons construction in Iran. This nuclear power plant that will eventually produce enough of the product that will cause or make nuclear bombs. And so now he's talking about an actual halt to the nuclear program. In other words, stop talking. It's time to do something about it. And it goes on to say, and until this is achieved, the pressure on Iran should be intensified and not eased, Netanyahu told his cabinet. An Israeli official speaking on a condition of anonymity said that Netanyahu and Obama would meet on September 30th in Washington and that the Prime Minister would probably address the UN Assembly the next day. And according to the statement from his office, Netanyahu outlined 4 steps he said were the way to stop Iran's nuclear program: stopping all uranium enrichment, removing all uranium enrichment, decommissioning Qom, and stopping the production of plutonium. Only a combination of these 4 measures would truly constitute stopping a nuclear program. Until all 4 objectives are met, we must intensify the pressure on Iran and not let go, and certainly not ease, Netanyahu said. I believe that the events of the past few weeks have proven all of our assumptions, and that the rogue country that develops or possesses weapons of mass destruction could very well use it. And at the end of the day, one might say, moving on, I believe that these events in the past weeks have proven all of our aspirations. That a rogue country that develops or possesses weapons of mass destruction could very well use it. And at the end of the day, one might say, will in fact use it. And the only credible military threat can confiscate diplomatic processes or other means of stopping this kind of armament, and that Israel must continue to fortify its strengths so that it is always prepared and ready to defend itself by itself against any threat. So look at this, because this is also very important. Defend it by itself. And this is again showing us signs of Zechariah 12:3, because Benjamin Netanyahu knows he's by himself. He can't depend on anybody. I will repeat a saying that you are all familiar with. If I am not for me, who will be for me? I say this is the collective sense of our people, he said. So what he was showing them in this speech that he just made is Israel knows that they're alone. And it shouldn't come to a surprise to any Christian who has been reading the Bible and been studying about these things, because they would have known that these events had to come. Just like the prophecies about Jesus Christ coming. They were fulfilled in the first coming, and now we're seeing those prophecies about his second coming, and we're seeing these prophecies just before he shows up. Very, very important news, to say the least, about what's taking place in the Middle East in relationship to the Psalm 83 war and the Ezekiel war. So the question is, how many people, not only in America, but how many people around the world are finally starting to see how Barack Obama has been treating his supposedly ally? And all I could say is, Mr. Obama, if you continue to do this, all you're doing is heaping God's curse on this nation, as we see in Genesis 12:3, as we see in Joel chapter 3, verse 2, and as you can see here in Zechariah 12:3. There is definitely a curse for anyone who burdens themselves over Jerusalem, God's holy city, where the Jews are. And when you, Mr. Obama, want to give this land away, you have placed the United States under the curse, and don't expect any good things to happen to the United States as long as they've been under this curse. And I'm talking also about not only what's taking place in the economy, which I'm going to cover now, but also the disasters that are coming on the United States as America continues to go ahead and try to divide the land up in Israel like John Kerry's doing right now in Israel. Now, in closing, I just want to show you this investment watch because this goes to heart of the matter for the United States, as far as I'm concerned, when you're talking about the curse that has come on America. And there's a Canadian billionaire who has predicted the end of the U.S. dollar, and I've been warning about this as well as many others for a very long time, and how this dollar, the United States dollar, is pegged to the reserve currency that is being used worldwide. And now we're starting to see that nation after nation is moving in a direction that they're not going to use the dollar as the reserve currency. And what does that mean to the average American, or to any American living in America or outside of America? What is it going to do? Obviously, it's going to bring down America's power. So there is a video, very interesting video, that came out in this article that I want to show you this video, and it will explain exactly what this Canadian billionaire is talking about, how he sees the United States.
In my view, the dollar is about to become dethroned as the world's de facto currency, basically. I'll just tell you how I come to that conclusion so quickly. The new president of China, his name is Xi Jinping. His first visit on the day of his becoming president was at his request to meet with Mr. Putin. And he immediately made a deal with Mr. Putin to get all the oil that he needs, which he can buy in renminbi. Now, the big part of the US dollar being the world's reserve currency is that at the time that Nixon gave up the gold standard, he had Henry Kissinger as his advisor, and Dr. Kissinger very, very brilliantly convinced the Saudis that they must sell their oil in US dollars. And that's the way the US dollar became the reserve currency of the world, because everybody needed oil. The only oil that was available in those days, we didn't have shale. We had the shale. We didn't have the brilliance in how to use it. But everybody needed oil, and they had to buy it with US dollars. And that's how the dollar got to where it is today. It's about to become dethroned as the world's de facto currency. The closing words that the reporters reported from Xi Jinping and Mr. Putin was shaking hands, and we have an international partnership that is very important. So you've got China and Russia, and we've seen it now in the Syrian thing. I could not think of something more ridiculous than trying to solve the Syrian thing by throwing a missile out from the Mediterranean and not knowing how many innocent people you're going to kill because somebody killed innocent people. It makes no sense at all, but that was Mr. Obama's game, and he was going to do it. Frankly, the Israelis have bombed Syria 4 times in the last 24 months. You never read about it in the newspaper. They took out their nuclear plant. They took out 3 warehouses of chemical weapons. No need for a missile. They just sent in jets with pilots who dropped bombs. So the dollar's becoming dethroned as far as I'm concerned. In 1929, the supply of paper money was limited because it was backed by silver. Our current dollar, US, is backed by nothing. So people would use the dollar because they could turn it in and get silver. The Chinese have 3.5 trillion US dollars, and they're spending these dollars as quickly as they can. And it will not be long before the rest of us in the world and the U.S. will be thinking likewise. I do, as we buy things to protect our future purchase power. In the 30s, everyone wanted U.S. dollars. Today, everyone wants to get rid of them. Buying hard assets is what you'll hear from many people in the business that I'm in. We're headed to a period of stagflation, maybe serious inflation, but stagflation for sure. And the United States will be losing the privilege of being able to print at its will of the world's reserve currency, a period that will be very inflationary. And I can tell you that before that happens, it is likely going to become quite ugly. We're living through a very uncertain atmosphere, and it's all related to politics and money. And interest rates and confidence turns overnight. Investors are not rational. There's no time when the truth takes place. China is the world's largest debt holder. Japan is the second largest debt holder of U.S. money, and they have to act on their own interest, and they are. 1.6% interest rates are not deserved by the United States. The problem is the United States can't afford to pay anymore. So they don't deserve their bond rating, and they're probably going to lose it. Discretionary spending in the United States is 36% of government spending. There's an excellent chance that the U.S. will soon be determined to be in a recession once again. I believe they already are. It's highly likely that they will be soon determined to be in a recession. 75% of their new jobs are low-wage, part-time, and often government-inspired. Unemployment is understated. Real unemployment is probably closer to 15%. Even Walmart is suffering. The end result of higher government spending, the full employment policy, and the U.S. Federal Reserve's obsession with interest rates has been a roller coaster ride along a rising path, and a rising path of inflation, which from time to time is brought under check. But each time it rises again, and after a check has been rising on a fraction of income is received along with the government tax receipts. Since time immemorial, sovereign kings, emperors, or elected parliamentarians of any sort have used magic money to acquire things or wage wars. And it just doesn't work. I'll quote Jim Grant, and I'll close. You'll rifle through history books in vain to find another monetary era like this one. A reserve currency made of paper, nothing else, is one novelty. A pan-European currency, also weightless, is a second. Chronic and immense imbalancing. A deepening deficit in America is a third. So thank you for listening longer than I intended to speak.
So this is Frank DeMora thanking you for allowing me to come into your home and to connect the dots between Bible prophecy and current events. Today would be a great day to receive Christ as your Savior, as we know that His second coming is approaching fast.